jury, the defendant, and all counsel. Juror 13, thank you for letting us know you could not hear. Are you able to hear me now?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. I want to make sure that you heard all of the testimony from earlier, Juror 13. Did you let us know immediately when your earphones cut out?
Yes, Your Honor.
So we will proceed then. I'm going to ask the last question again, and I'm going to ask Ms. Arias to answer it from the beginning. Who initiated contact after the various breakups? With Bobby, Matt, Daryl, and Travis. Begin with Bobby.
With Bobby, we had many breakups, and we got back together many times during our 2-year period. And I'm trying to remember, I don't remember the specifics of each time, but it would have been both. I know one particular time when I was moving my things out of the house, I packed everything up and left and put it in my grandma's. This wasn't the time that I found out he was cheating on me. This was another time subsequent to that. And I guess I kind of initiated contact that time because I knew he didn't have a vehicle, money, job, and his parents were already in the rest home by then. So I went to the grocery store, I bought him some groceries, I left them on his porch so that he could have something to eat. And he called my grandmother's house after that and thanked me. So we picked up again, sort of. We never really stopped contacting each other until we finally stopped for good. And I remember actually when we finally stopped for good, he sent me an email and I did call him back. And that conversation wasn't unfriendly, but it was definitely not a get back together conversation, and that's the last time he and I ever spoke. Let's see, with Matt, we broke up after I sort of confronted him. I went to his dad's house and he was there. He was on the phone with Bianca, so he already knew what I was there to talk about with him. We went into my car to chit chat and discuss this. There were a lot of tears. We knew we were done. We were broken up. My heart was broken, and so what I did is I wrote out a long letter to him. Well, it was an email. I typed it out and I sent it to him just so that he would know my heart, where my heart was, my thoughts, and that kind of thing, and where I felt that maybe he did err, where I felt he erred. And so that was just, it wasn't like trying to initiate contact again, but I did send him that. That was kind of just my goodbye email. I don't remember how it came about that he ended up coming down to Ventana with me, but I know that he was looking for seasonal work, and the time that he was in Borrego Springs, the weekend or week that I found out about Bianca, that job application did not pan out. So he still needed a job, and he came down to Ventana, and Daryl hired him. As far as Daryl, well, there was really no separation right away, because when I broke up with him, we still had the same house together. We had separate bedrooms, but we would see each other coming and going. We had different work schedules mostly, but typically we both worked at night, so sometimes he was there in the daytime, whether I was at work or not. I had 2 jobs during most of that time. So we never really stopped contacting each other, but we stopped being intimate. And then he moved away in early December, so I think we continued to contact each other for bills. Usually it was him because I didn't have money and I felt bad about that. So generally it was that, but I don't know, I've initiated contact since, like when I stopped by to visit his son and him later on in 2008. As far as Travis, we broke up over the phone on June 29th, 2007. And I don't remember, but I believe he called me the next morning. He was at his friend's, Chris and Sky's house, and he called me the next day, and we just had another conversation. It was kind of less dramatic. It was more just normal, the conversation, and then it ended up turning sexual. So that proceeded that way. I continue to contact him as well.
How far is Crater Lake from Ashland?
Crater Lake from Ashland, I want to say 70 miles, I'm guessing. I think there's a freeway sign somewhere in that area that says Crater Lake 70 miles. So
How
it's about
far is
that.
Medford from Crater Lake?
It's a similar distance. There are, if you imagine a triangle, you have Ashland, just north you have Medford, and you can take a highway this way to Crater Lake or a highway this way to Crater Lake, and it's about a similar distance and driving time.
How far is Medford from Ashland?
Medford and Ashland, I'm not sure exact mileage, but it takes 10 to 15 minutes on the freeway.
How did you know Victor's family?
Victor Arias, my ex-boyfriend in Costa Rica, I moved to well, I didn't move there, but I went there on an exchange program and lived there for a few weeks in the summer. Victor was in that household at the time, and that's how we met, and that's how I knew his family. And when I went back there the second time, it was to spend time with his family. Victor had already moved out and moved on by that point.
Please explain the events again that led up to your dad slapping you during the incident you described earlier.
I'm not clear if that's the one where he knocked me out or the actual slap, but I will describe the one where he slapped me twice. That was, I snuck out of the house when I shouldn't have. We were moving soon. The whole family was moving soon to Wairika. I was very upset about it. Wairika is a small town. When you're going into high school, it just doesn't sound exciting to live there at all. So I was upset, and my friends and I, friends that I had made, we wanted to spend more time together. So I snuck out of the house. We hung out. I don't know what we did. We just hung out. And so sneaking out of the house was against the rules, and my parents found out. I believe they found out because the dog got in, because I didn't shut the door all the way, and woke them up. And so I don't think they waited up for me because they were asleep when I got back, and I went to sleep, and they woke me up around, I don't know what time it was. It was early, very early. And so he asked where I'd been. I think I said, I don't know, and he smacked me. And then he sat me up, asked me again, and I think I said the same answer. He wasn't happy with whatever I'd said, and he smacked me again.
What is your relationship with your mother like today?
It is very complicated, and it's very strained. Her and I, we rub each other the wrong way all day long, but nonetheless, there is a deep love there. I think there are very few individuals that I love as much as I love my mom. So in that regard, because it's strained, it's also very painful, but I love her a lot.
What is your relationship with your father like today?
It's not incredibly close, but I have unconditional love for my dad, and I find that I'm able to love him better when we interact a little bit less as opposed to more often, because I don't know if it's because our personalities don't jive, or I don't know. I think he's kind of a negative person, but maybe it's because I'm negative. I don't know. I'm not trying to blame him, but we get along, and times we don't get along, and at the times we don't get along, it hurts me, so I don't like to go there very often.
Would it be possible to have Jodi run through the attack on 6408 using the floor plan Exhibit 249? Valerie, would you take Exhibit 249 and put it on the projector, please? Ms. Arias, will you run through the attack on June 4, 2008 using the floor plan?
Can you move it up to show the shower and the bathroom? I don't know if it focuses out more to show more space. That's actually where you just had it was, well, yeah, maybe right about there. It might have to be moved again because the bathroom is long. Yeah, that's good. It'll probably have to be moved up though. Eventually. It starts there.
Let me know.
Okay. It started where Travis was in the shower. I was right outside the shower a few feet. I was taking photos of him, facing him in the shower. Back and forth, we would check the photos. Some got deleted because they didn't turn out great, or he was making a wrong expression or something. And then others we kept. And so I would do this and do that, and then we crouched and did the same thing. We tried a few different positions. And then at one point, we were deleting, and I went to move again and shift and face him, and the camera, it slipped. It was kind of like, the best I could describe it, like when you go to catch a football, but it bounces, and you kind of fumble it a little, because it didn't slip and just drop. It slipped, and I tried to catch it, and it kind of bounced a little, and then fell on the ground, and bounced and rolled onto the tile. It fell first on the mat, Then it rolled right onto the tile. The mat isn't very big. It's just kind of right outside the shower, and then the tile is right outside. So at that point, he got very angry, and he stepped out of the shower. He lifted me up from the crouch position with enough force that my feet came off the ground momentarily, and he body slammed me on the tile. At that point, I rolled, and I ran down the hallway, which is where 7 is. It goes on there. I'm sorry. Can you, yeah, right there. Yes. I ran down the hallway. I ran into the closet. I slammed the door. I start running. If you are looking at the diagram, it would be on the left side of the seat. I began running that way with my initial intent to probably run out this door. I instead went for the gun. I grabbed the gun. Right about then, Travis was opening the door. I grabbed it. I ran out into the bathroom. He ran, I believe, straight toward the door as well. And can you show the bathroom area again? A little bit more. Yeah. At that point, I had run out of the bathroom, and I turned, and I just wanted him to stop, so I pointed the gun at him, hoping that that would just make him halt. And it didn't. Instead, he lunged at me right around the time that the gun went off, and I didn't mean for it to go off. We fell with pretty good force down in the corner, near 15, but not quite that close. It was kind of near the sink, kind of, sort of that area. And he fell kind of on top of me, but to my right. I didn't want him to get on top of me. He was grabbing at my clothes. He was trying to get on top of me. I don't know where the gun went at that point. It was not in my hands anymore. If it got knocked out of my hands or if I dropped it, what. I broke away from him, and as soon as the moment I broke away, that's when he threatened my life. I'd have no clear memories after that, at all. Things began to get really foggy after the gun went off. And I know he was screaming and cursing. I don't remember exact words except the ones he said to me right after I dropped the camera, which was about a 5-year-old being able to hold a camera better than me, and that I was an idiot. And he was using profanities with those statements.
Regarding the 9mm gun you purchased on July 1st, 2008, you mentioned a camping trip as one of the reasons for the purchase. Who was going on the camping trip?
There was 2 dishwashers from Purple Plum, which is where I had worked in the past, and I was still friends with them. One guy's name was Calvin. I don't remember his last name. He was somebody that I'm trying to remember if Calvin was one of the dishwashers or one of the customers or a former employee, but he was at the restaurant all the time. And then another guy, I don't remember his name, he's very tall. He worked as a dishwasher in the back and a prep cook, and he was going as well, and a few other people were all going. So that's all I can say with that.
Why were you planning on going if you were scared?
I wasn't scared, I was just being cautious. These are people that I knew, but I wasn't very well acquainted with, and I just didn't I'd rather have it and not need it than need it suddenly and not have it, being out in the wilderness. I wasn't scared, I was just I was trying to be cautious. I had seen like a new side of what a man can do, so I wanted to be extra careful as far as being out there alone with a group of men. I think maybe some women were coming too, but I didn't know. At that point, I was the only girl on the trip.
Were you paid for the interview with 48 hours?
No, I never asked for compensation. They never offered. There was no compensation at all.
Were you paid for the interview with Inside Edition?
The same, no. I was not paid. Someone encouraged me to ask because she had given an interview to Inside Edition and they paid her $50. She had a charge in New York and they did that. But I did not ask and they didn't offer. In
an interview with Detective Flores, Exhibit 5 03. You talked to him about taking photos of Travis while he was shaving. At some point, you state he must have liked it because he used it on his MySpace page. Can you explain what he used?
Yes, he used the photograph that was displayed yesterday. He used that photo as his profile picture, and what that means is if you type in the URL to his MySpace page, the profile comes up, and you can, if it's public, you can see different things about the people or the person whose page it is. If it's private, you don't see those details, but you still see the person's profile picture, and that was his. So that was kind of his photo that represented his MySpace page. There were other photos within photo albums on the account, but the one that comes up on the front page or the main page of his thing was that photo of him shaving. So I assumed he liked it because that's what he was displaying to the world at that point.
You stated that you tried to call Matt and Daryl about your change in plans regarding going to Mesa, but said they did not answer. Why didn't you just leave them messages or text them?
When I called Matt and Daryl, it wasn't really about the change in plans. It was more about, I was trying to see if I left my phone charger there because I couldn't find it anywhere and my battery juice was getting very low. So I definitely wouldn't have told Daryl I'm going to go see Travis because I think that would have been a snub to him, and I was still sensitive to his feelings in that area. Nor would I have told Daryl I'm going to go see this guy Ryan. So I wouldn't have told him either of those. I definitely wouldn't have told Matt that I was going to go see Travis because Matt had very, very negative opinions about Travis, and he would have been very against it.
You testified that you reported your cell phone lost in May of 2008. When and where was it found?
Yes, I actually reported it to the Wairika Police Department as stolen, possibly lost. I thought it was stolen because I searched high and low, and I left it in my grandfather's vehicle when I ran in to pay for Chinese takeout, and it's in Wairika. I mean, locking the car door isn't a big deal. I didn't think I left it in there, but that was what I concluded when I made the report because it wasn't in my purse. I called it, it didn't ring. I looked everywhere. Was the rest of the question, when was it found?
Yes.
Okay. It was found, to my understanding, in 2010. My aunt found it, actually. She's sitting right over there on the front row. She cleaned out my grandfather's car and found it somewhere in there and turned it over to my grandmother or my parents. I don't know.
Sustained. Have you taken long trips by yourself, such as the one from California to Arizona to Utah in June of 2008 in the past?
I'm sorry, will you repeat that?
Have you taken long trips by yourself in the past, such as the one from California to Arizona to Utah, the one you took in June of 2008?
Only along highways that I was familiar with, such as from Monterey County to Wairika, or after I became familiar with the drive from Arizona to Southern California. And the Monterey to Wairika drive, I'd probably driven it but ridden it with my family over the years, countless times. I could name all the cities, all the landmarks, all those things along the way. I knew where everything was on those roads, and I had had experiences in various cities along those roads. So those roads I was familiar with. I've never driven on the I-15, at least for any great distance, and not outside of California.
How often did you take such trips?
I like to do road trips. Travis and I began to do road trips.
Sustained. How often did you take such trips?
I wouldn't know an exact number.
During the trips you took, did you take extra gas cans with you?
Only after I moved to the desert. Daryl was like, we're from the coast, so we had total shocks to our systems when we experienced our first summer here. And we began to carry cases of water in our trunk, and if we were going long distances, we'd carry a gas can just in case, because he thought, he would be like, you could die out here. You know, if something happens, if your car runs out of gas, you can't turn the air conditioning on, you could literally die of heat stroke, and that was a fear. So we carried water, and we didn't carry gas around with us all the time if we were just hanging around town, but if we went out to 29 Palms or somewhere like that, then that would happen.
If you took gas cans with you, where did you get them?
I got the two gas cans that I took on that trip, I got from Daryl. And then I bought the third one, and then I determined I didn't need it, and I returned it.
I think the question is referring to in the past, if you took gas cans with you, where did you get them?
Oh, they were Daryl's.
During your testimony, you mentioned Travis had hit your car once. Can you tell us about that incident?
Yes, that was the incident in May 2007. We had spent 2 days at Disneyland and then we were driving from Anaheim to Los Angeles, where the Getty Center is, because the Getty Center is on the list. That was our purpose for going. And on the way there, there was a ton of traffic. I don't remember if it was 5 lanes or 6 lanes, but it was bumper to bumper. Not any of the lanes were moving at all, hardly. We would just inch along, inch along, inch along. And he grew very frustrated, very impatient, and angry. And he began just, I don't want to say what he said, but he just began yelling at other drivers, and they weren't aware of him at all doing that, but he was just screaming at the other drivers. He was beating on the steering wheel. He would beat the inside of the door, the driver's side door, just with his fist, or just the horns were on the sides. He wasn't honking the horn, but he would beat the center of the steering wheel.
Why did you confront Travis after seeing him with another woman through his backyard window, if it was not due to jealousy?
I felt that because he was making an effort, this was also right after we had just slept together consensually, and we went all the way, and he said, "I love you," and all these things. So I felt like we were getting back together. And when I saw that, it seemed in contrast to what he had been telling me for the last month and a half. So my intention was to do was to go there and just find out what's the deal.
She was asking, she wasn't jealous. Why did she confront him?
I'm explaining why I went over there.
You may continue.
So my intention of going over there was not out of jealousy, but it was because I wanted to know where I stood. Are we still trying this? Do you have a new girlfriend? If he had a girlfriend, that was fine. I just wanted to know, was all.
If you simply wanted to know where you stood because he was courting you back, why were you so upset that you needed to call your father about the incident the next day?
I didn't want to call my father. I wanted to call my sister, my little sister, because her and I talk. We're relatively close, and we talk about stuff like that. It's a girl thing. So I called my parents' home because she lived there at the time. And she wasn't home, but my dad answered, and he could tell that maybe I was sad. So that's why I began to talk to him. The reason I was sad was because Travis and I were getting back together.
Sustained. Sustained. You mentioned an earlier failed attempt using rope during a sexual encounter. Can you tell us what happened that day, when this occurred, and how Travis handled the failure?
I didn't hear that. Judge, can I ask a quick question?
Certainly.
I thought that last question said, why were you so upset that you had to call your father? So I began to explain why I was upset.
All right. Your attorney will have an opportunity to follow up with you later.
Okay, thank you.
You mentioned an earlier failed attempt using rope during a sexual encounter. Can you tell us what happened that day when this occurred and how Travis handled the failure?
Yes. He handled it just fine. He didn't get upset. We just stopped. He used twine, and it was very scratchy, and it sort of was not cutting into my wrist, but it was abrasive, and it was somewhat painful. So at that point, he just cut the twine off with a knife as well.
Did Travis's dog usually bark when someone came into the house?
Yes, if the dog heard the door open, he was very animated, and he would bark very loud.
Did the dog usually bark with loud, unexplained noises?
Typically only if the doorbell rang or somebody knocked at the front door.
Why would you continue to stay with someone who had sex with you while you were sleeping?
At that point, that would have been May 2007, I was in love with Travis. I knew I was in love with him, and it didn't make a difference to me, honestly. I was in love with him. My only concern was that I believed from a religious and spiritual perspective that our relationship would not be blessed if we acted that way. So, as in vaginal sex. That was my belief at the time.
When did you find out that Travis had a gun?
I found out in the fall 2007 when I was cleaning his shelves. I had different projects, and it was around the fall. I don't remember if it was in October or November, but it was around that time.
To your knowledge, did police ever find your grandfather's gun that was stolen?
To my knowledge, no, none of the property that was stolen from that house was recovered ever.
Why did you place Travis's body back in the shower?
I could only speculate because I don't remember, and I could speculate based on who I know that I am or thought I was. Should I?
Objection, speculation.
Sustained, so don't answer the question. Do you know what time you left Travis's house on June 4, 2008?
I don't remember the exact time, but as far as
Objection,
the daytime,
speculation.
Sustained. What happened to the clothes you were wearing on June 4, 2008?
I don't remember. I was in clothes when I came to, and I don't.
Objection, speculation, then she doesn't know.
Sustained. You say Travis had attacked you before June 4, 2008, but would apologize to you after he did it. So why was the June 4, 2008 incident so different?
June 4th was escalated, and he always apologized afterward prior occasions. On prior occasions, I'd never feared for my life. And even when he was choking me out and I was losing consciousness, I didn't have enough time to fear for my life. I passed out. It wasn't until after that incident, when I reflected back on it, that I realized I could have died. And if he could take it that far, and he was as angry as he was, and I perceived very clearly that he was trying to get back on top of me again, that freaked me out. I was scared out of my mind.
You and Travis continued to talk on the phone after you moved back to Wairika, including phone sex. Would it be fair to say you were upset he was taking another woman to Cancun?
No, I was not upset. I wasn't upset at all, actually. Cancun was long, it was announced a year before. He was taking a babysitter, I thought. I didn't learn that he was taking Mimi Hall until well afterward.
Objection, no, she's going beyond the fact she was not.
Sustained. Why did you send his grandmother flowers?
In retrospect, it probably wasn't a good idea, but I felt that it would be more insensitive to not do it, anything at all.
Why did you take the rope and gun with you?
There were a lot of actions I took that day that I don't remember. But as far as disposing of it, I knew that something bad had happened, and I knew that I felt like I had done something wrong.
Did you lock Travis's bedroom door when you left on June 4, 2008?
I don't remember anything of that nature, that whole time gap. I don't know.
Did you try and clean up the scene after you left on June 4, 2008?
Based on the evidence, I believe I did. Maybe make some kind of attempt, but I don't recall doing that.
If you climbed on the shelf to grab the gun in a hurry, how is it that nothing was disorganized in Travis's closet?
I only had to step on the edge with my foot. I put up 1 foot. I only had to it's the shelf, so I just had to grip the edge and grab it. So it's not quite as tall as it appeared in the photo. You just put 1 foot up on the edge, grab the other, you're up like 2 or 3 feet extra already. I grabbed the gun with my right hand, I believe. I don't know, right or left, probably right. And then I ran out the door.
If you shot Travis first, how did the casing land on blood?
I don't believe it landed on blood when the gunshot went off.
Speculation. Yes,
She's asking a question to ask.
Overruled. You may continue.
I do know that we struggled, so something could have happened subsequent to that, but to my knowledge, there was no blood in that bathroom before the gunshot went off.
After you shot Travis, why not run out of the house to get away?
Initially, that was my attempt. That's why I started running down the hall. The bedroom doors were closed.
I'm going to object. It's speculation. In fact, she said after she shot him, she didn't remember.
No, I said it got foggy after the shot. I
Overruled,
remember
you may
things.
continue. You may
Maybe I
continue.
misunderstood the question. I thought that it was after I got body slammed. Is that?
After you shot Travis, why not run out of the house to get away?
Okay, I'm sorry, that is correct. After I shot him, I didn't know that I shot him, but after the gun went off, while he was lunging at me, we fell over, and he was trying to get on top of me. It's hard to describe the fear. It was like mortal terror. It really was. When he was trying to get on top of me, I thought he was, and then he threatened my life. I really thought he had intentions to kill me. So I don't remember any specifics of what happened right after that point.
Why didn't you call 911?
I was very scared of what would happen to me, I was scared at that point of what was going to happen. I mean, I knew that, well, I felt that I had done something wrong, and I don't have really an adequate explanation for my state of mind following that. I just know that I knew something really bad had happened, and I was scared.
If Travis attacked you on June 4th, why not just tell the police the truth from the start?
That one's kind of a complicated answer. I didn't want people to know the kinds of things that were going on in our relationship. I felt that if I told police Travis attacked me, I would have to give explanation as to why he attacked me. And if I gave explanation as to why, I would have to go back through the different incidents that we'd gone through and how those things didn't really begin until after I walked in on him. I believe they were related, and I didn't ever want to go there. So it was all convoluted, and I thought that by saying that would open the door to that, to that, to that. And I didn't want to de-edify him. I was embarrassed about a lot of those things, and I was ashamed, and I was also very scared about, whether I was defending myself or not. I felt like it was wrong to kill somebody regardless of the circumstances.
Were you kneeling when you dropped the camera?
Yes, I was kneeling on one knee, I think.
When Travis stepped out of the shower to attack you, was he wet?
Yes.
If so, did he slip at all on the tile in the bathroom or hallway?
I didn't see him, but the tile is slick when it's wet.
When entering the closet, why didn't you just go up in the door closest to you?
My intention was not to run into the closet. When I rolled away, my intention was to run out of the room. I didn't make the decision to go into the closet until I realized that by going left, I kind of just went back to that brief moment when he caught my wrist last time. I intended to run left. And this time I would have to open the door. It would swing open this way. As I was running down the hall, I would have to go this way. I would come down the hallway. The door would open this way. I would have to go out this way. So it just seemed this door over here was open. It split-second decision. It just seemed safer or easier or faster to run in there and slam the door. And then I knew there was an exit. It wasn't a dead end. So there was another door there that I could run out of.
Do you know how tall the ceiling in Travis's closet was?
No.
Was the gun in a case or just laying on the shelf?
I don't remember how it was on June 4th. When I first discovered it, I don't recall seeing a holster of any kind, but Travis did have one for it. I don't remember on June 4th.
Why is it that you have no memory of stabbing Travis?
I can't really explain why my mind did what it did. Maybe because it's too horrible. I don't know. I really don't know the answer as to why I blacked out or have memory gaps that much of that day.
Whether you had plans to commit suicide or not, why even mention no jury will ever convict me, mark my words, because I am innocent in the interview?
Well, I was very confident that no jury would convict me because I was going to be dead. As far as saying I'm innocent, definitely innocent of my charge was what I meant. And also I assumed that I would be in the next life where I believe that, you know, God is the ultimate judge, that he would understand the circumstances of that day and that it would ultimately, that he would know all of the circumstances that happened that day. So in that regard, innocent of the charge, but definitely there wouldn't be a conviction because you don't convict a dead person. I would be in the grave at that point.
In your interviews you gave on TV, were you forced to answer all of the questions they asked you?
I was not physically forced, but when you're put on the spot, it kind of feels like it. Like you kind of, for some reason I felt like I had to answer every question, but I wasn't forced, if that makes sense.
You have pictures of your other finger injuries that include timestamps. Do you have any pictures of your finger injury with timestamps?
I guess that would be the left finger. I didn't take a specific picture showing the injury, but any picture taken subsequent to June 22nd would show my ring finger bent, whether it was like that one in the photo or anywhere else.
Do you have any pictures of you wearing a finger splint?
No, definitely not.
Did anyone see you wearing a finger splint?
I wore it one day when I was working at Mimi's Cafe, but I don't know if anyone commented on it or not, so it was kind of embarrassing because it was a...
Objection, non-responsive. She was asked whether anybody saw it, not whether anybody commented.
Sustained. When did you realize that you had memory loss? The approximate date?
If that's a reference to June 4th, when I pulled over in the car and I began searching around for the water, the shoes, everything, just trying to clean myself up and then that kind of thing, I can attribute it to being maybe, I had memory loss one time when I was 19 because it was alcohol related, and one time when I was 15 because it's alcohol related. So that's the only other thing I can attribute it to. Just like a blackout. So that was when shortly thereafter, when I couldn't remember certain things. Some things have come back to me since, but just not all of it.
Did you have an attorney prior to the interview with CBS?
Not for my case. I had an attorney for the limited purpose of assisting me in my extradition from
Objection.
California.
Is that a yes or no?
Sustained, yes or no?
Yes, sort of, I guess.
You said you got the 2 gas cans so that you could fill up in Nevada or Utah where gas was cheaper than California. Why did you fill the gas cans up in Pasadena?
Yes, that's why I initially got the gas cans from Daryl, was so that I could save money on gas and that kind of thing. I'm a coupon clipper, that kind of person. But when I got to Southern California and realized I'm taking the I-15 across 2.5 states, I've never driven this before. It's the middle of the night. I'm by myself. I'm in a car that I'm not very familiar with. I didn't want to be stuck in the dark somewhere in the desert. I've heard lots of horror stories, and I wanted to make sure that I wasn't stranded.
In all of the 3-hour church sessions, family home evenings, missionary discussions, and other church events, you were never told or were never under the impression that other forms of sexual intercourse, oral and anal, were forbidden.
I did get that impression on a few occasions, and I discussed it with Travis, and he clarified it for me in his way.
Objection as to whether or not she got it from these occasions, not whether she spoke with the victim.
Sustained. Is the answer yes?
Somewhat, yes, but it wasn't clear.
Did you know that Travis did not like John Dixon prior to your date with John Dixon?
Prior to my first date with him, no, I didn't even know. I don't think he even knew John Dixon. Maybe had seen him through prepaid legal, but prior to that date, no. And I'm talking about before Travis and I became boyfriend-girlfriend. As far as the date that occurred after we broke up, I knew that he didn't care for John Dixon.
Why were you willing to get involved with two men at the same time?
Well, I was trying to get, it was very difficult to break away from Travis. I knew we were going in separate directions, but we kept continuing with the same habits that we had. And I had said before that I'm monogamous, and by that I do mean sexually monogamous for sure. I've never had more than one partner at the same time in that regard. So as far as Ryan, he was just a potential person that I wanted to get to know. And if things had gone further, then I definitely would have cut off that sort of contact with Travis.
When you were asked about the video you made having sex with Travis on June 4, 2008, you said you used your camera. But when you were asked about your camera later, you said you didn't take it out of the car that day. Which of these two is true?
For clarification, both is true. Both are true. The Canon stayed in the vehicle. My Olympus was tiny, and it was always in my purse, so it went in. And the Olympus is Stylus 500 model, I think, and it had video and on it. The Canon did not.
When you realized that you did not connect like you expected, why did you continue to speak to Travis?
I think that's a reference to Ehrenberg, because we weren't connecting the way we had before. Travis and I connected very well over the phone. It seemed like it was more of an emotional and mental sort of connection, a meeting of minds, so to speak. And I was not going to contact him again after 3 failed attempts over the weekend, and then I didn't hear from him. So when he called me Tuesday and left me a very sweet voicemail, it kind of was a feeling of relief, like, oh, okay, I wasn't just being used. He still cares. So I called back, and he was somewhat remorseful that we had gone that long without talking, and we agreed to not do that again. I mean, as far as going that long without communication.
What is your understanding of the word skank?
I don't know an official definition, but it's a very negative and pejorative, derogative term against women.
Why did you share housing with Matt at the time you were in a relationship with Travis?
Well, the reason I moved to Big Sur, Matt was the available housing in Big Sur. And Matt, by this point, had reached...
She's answered the question. Available housing.
Was it why?
Overruled. You may continue.
Okay. The reason I felt comfortable living with Matt was because at that point in time, this was, I want to say 7 years after we'd broken up, our friendship had evolved to a point where we were more like a brother-sister kind of relationship. There was no attraction, zero. We didn't even hug. It was just, we were just friends, and we were more like siblings. And I think Travis understood that. I don't know.
Sustained. Were there any girls working with you that you could share a room with?
At Ventana, no, there were not.
How can you be a sister to Matt, someone you had sex with in the past?
It does sound strange, but it just has to do with the way our friendship evolved after the breakup. I got over what he did with Bianca, and that resentment melted away and gave way to sort of just a genuine goodwill toward him and him toward me. Also, our time at Ventana was broken up because when at one point, I think I'd mentioned on direct that the restaurant at Ventana closed, And so the entire dining operation was moved over to the inn, and we operated out of there. During that 5-week period that the restaurant was being remodeled, Matt moved to Vail, Colorado. I didn't see him for 6 or 7 or 8 months. He had another relationship at that time, and by the time he moved back, Daryl and I had started a relationship. And at first it was a little bit awkward, but then Matt and I realized we just jive in a certain way, but it's more like we're better off friends rather than boyfriend, girlfriend. And that was a place where we reached an acceptance, and there was no longer an attraction to Matt. I think it was more, I was blinded by love, and now I saw all his other qualities. I still liked him as a person, but I was not attracted to him, if that makes sense.
Why didn't you read the Book of Mormon to see what you were and were not allowed to do?
I did read the Book of Mormon. There is additional doctrine that explains the commandments a lot more, called the Doctrine and Covenants. And the Book of Mormon does cover a lot of the basics. It's very similar to the Bible in some of those things, like the Beatitudes are sort of reworded in one portion of it. I think the 10 Commandments are sort of reworded in some portion of it, but it's more the Doctrine and Covenants that go into detail, and also subsequent presidencies that the church has gone through have clarified even more what certain commandments mean, what that really entails, such as the word of wisdom. When the Doctrine and Covenants was written in the 1800s, it doesn't say anything about coffee, tea, alcohol, or illegal drugs. It mentions hot drinks and tobacco. And more clarification was given in the 20th century, and so it's kind of like that. Like, I did read the Book of Mormon, but it's not ultra specific.
Why did you ask Travis about everything you did?
About everything I did? I don't understand that question.
All right, then we'll move on to the next one. Why did you start a relationship with Ryan Burns when you said earlier, when I am with one guy, I don't see other guys?
Well, I didn't consider myself Travis's girlfriend because I broke up with him on June 29th of the previous year. Also, I moved over 1,000 miles to get away from him. And so even though it was hard to break up, so to speak, we were broken up. But we still continued some of the same patterns we had. I was still attempting to move on, maybe not making the best attempt, but when somebody introduced us through text message, we began to call and just sort of hit it off. We were just talking friends, and it was only a potential thing. So I didn't consider myself seeing Ryan or seeing Travis, but Travis was still the person that I was most intimate with.
Why is it that you cannot remember when Travis lent you money, but you remember the exact amount that you lent him all 3 times?
I do remember times he lent me money. I think I went into a few of those times, and one of the reasons I specifically remember amounts that he lent me is because it's documented in my journal, and I've since reread that journal several times.
Why did you think that the incident that happened on June 4, 2008 was any different from the ones before, so that you had to kill him to protect yourself?
June 4th was very different in that even though I thought he would never get that way again, because it just, like, I think he scared himself when I passed out based on our subsequent conversations, and we realized how far it went. I thought that it was done at that point as far as violence goes. So when it happened again, and I realized how far it can escalate when he gets that angry, I was terrified this time, especially because he was trying to get on top of me. And also, he just kept coming. He didn't stop. Even when I tried to stop him by running away or pointing a weapon at him, he kept coming, and he just did not stop.
You mentioned injuries that would not have been seen by others when you were in Utah in June of 2008. Can you go into detail as to where they were and how you received them? Yes.
My ankles were bleeding, not profusely, but they were scratched and they were injured. I had socks and shoes on. Also, when I hit the tile, the back of my head right here slammed on the tile. And my shoulder's never been the same, but I don't know if it's related to being slammed on the tile or not. It's off, is all I can say. It hurts constantly, actually.
When you injured yourself at Casa Ramos, rotating the glasses, did your supervisor have you fill out any forms to document the injury for workers' compensation purposes?
No, this was a small business operation. They didn't have formalities like forms and that kind of thing, just what was minimally required as far as being a legal documented worker. It was a less formal, it wasn't a corporate kind of setting where those kind of formalities were done.
Who was the main factor in your decision to move from Big Sur / Palm Desert to Mesa, Travis or Rachel?
It was Travis, ultimately.
You testified that you thought you heard his footsteps. If you weren't sure, why didn't you just run downstairs and out the door?
It was all a split-second decision, but like I had said, when I got toward the carpet area, that's where he caught my wrist before when I began running down that hallway on a previous occasion. And so here I am running away from him down the hallway again. And on the previous occasion, my intention was to run out of the room, and I didn't make it out of the room. So rather than try to this time open the door and run out of the room, this closet door was open and I knew there was another exit. So I just ran into that as quickly as I could.
Why would you take the time to delete the photos off the camera after you killed Travis?
That would go with all the other things that I did that day. When things happened, I don't have memory of it, specific memory of it at all. But, I mean, I could...
Objection. She's going to speculate.
Sustained. You stated you remember dropping the knife and hearing it hit the tile. What happened to the knife after that?
I don't recall what specifically happened right after that. I just know that it didn't go with me in the car.
I'm going to object to speculation. She has memory loss.
Sustained. If your phone had died while at Travis's, why not use a wall charger so you would have it charged before you got on the road?
That was a thought of mine, but Travis did not have a wall charger that had a plug that fit my type of phone. So I was not able to charge it there either.
In your email to Travis after June 4, 2008, you told him you would sleep in his bed while he was in Cancun. Did you ever stay overnight at his house without him there?
Yes, when I was pet sitting Napoleon, I did that.
How is it that you were so calm on the television interviews?
I tried very hard to present the best image I could, and I had had a lot of prior experience of pretending that everything was okay when it wasn't. Everything on the surface was okay when really it wasn't. I was accustomed to that, and also I wanted to portray that I'm confident and that I'm okay, I didn't do this, no worries. That's what I really wanted to get across at that time, and then I wanted to kill myself so that I would never have to own up to it.
You stated in the 48 Hours interview that Travis's family deserved to know the truth. If you really believed that, why didn't you confess then?
That was not entirely true, in that I didn't want them to know certain truths. And again, I said that because it's a derivative of my attempt to deny that I had anything to do with it.
If Travis wanted the phone sex conversations recorded, why didn't he record them?
His phone did not have that capability, neither did mine until I bought the Helio, or until Gus got me the Helio. I discovered that feature and we joked back and forth about it, and then I began to record them when we decided we would do that. His phone didn't have recording capability.
If you didn't want to be tied up to a tree, why would you go up and look for a place where he could do that?
It wasn't being tied to the tree that I was looking for. We were looking for a place out in the woods, nature, to somehow carry out this Little Red Riding Hood fantasy, and my understanding of that is that it would involve sex. But he had many other ideas, as you heard on the tape. It didn't necessarily mean that I was going to go for all those. I was kind of pushing my own limits anyway by going out to the woods to find a spot, and that was the purpose, was for that fantasy, but not specifically getting tied to a tree.
If you drop the camera on the bath mat, how is it that it rolled all the way in front of the bathtub?
On the diagram, it looks very far, but it's really a distance of this. You have the shower, there's a very thin wall, and then the bathtub begins right here. So wherever I was standing here, it didn't have to roll. It just bounced right off the mat, and it's not way down by the bathroom area, but it's right near the bathtub at that point. There's only a distance of about this much between the shower and the bathtub.
On the phone sex tape, when Travis was talking about photos and taking video, was that all part of his fantasy?
Taking photos and video, yes, that was a fantasy that he hoped to realize.
Did you ever voice any concern to Travis about being uncomfortable with some of his sexual fantasies?
Yes, there was one fantasy that he wanted to do, which was pulling off on the side of a freeway exit and having sex on the hood of a car. And I told him that that would be impossible. I couldn't even think of an exit in rural Northern California where that could be accomplished and nobody would see us. So that, and I was a little uncomfortable with the Mile High thing that he wanted to do because the flight attendants tend to monitor who's going and coming from the bathroom, and they don't allow two people in the bathroom at once. So just those two that I recall.
Why didn't you call Ryan and tell him you were going to Arizona when you decided you were going to Arizona?
I guess I didn't want Ryan to know that I still had the interest that I had in Travis. It would be kind of just the way I didn't want Travis to know that, but for different reasons, that I was interested in Ryan. I kind of felt like, how would it sound if I called up this guy that I'm going to go meet and say, hey, I'm going to go hang out with my ex-boyfriend for a little while. Sorry. You know, I didn't feel comfortable or like that was something that I would have done, is say, let him know I'm going to go hang out with my ex and then I'll swing by and meet you or something. It was a bad decision, but I made a lot of bad decisions when it came to Travis.
You have testified to many different occasions where you performed sexual favors with Travis to keep him pleased and happy. Are you saying you never got pleasure out of sex with Travis?
Definitely not. I did. Many occasions he was very romantic, very loving, and I guess you could say attentive, and he cared about my pleasure as well. Not always, but there were times when we were very compatible in that regard.
Why would you continue to carry your journals around with you if it was possible others, including Travis, might find them and read them?
To my knowledge, no one else read my journals. And then once I discovered that Travis did, I was a little more guarded about it, but I kept my journal inside my purse, and my purse zipped up, and nobody really went through my purse, so I considered it safe in my purse because nobody got into my purse except me, typically.
Why were the laws of attraction so important to follow, but the law of chastity was not?
I believed that I was following the law of chastity for a long time. I realize now that I was not. The law of attraction was also a huge philosophy of mine. It was my second religion, pretty much. Also, with the law of chastity and what it prohibits, there is a great deal of temptation when I would hang out with Travis. And even though we eventually did begin to, under how I understood it, openly violate the law of chastity, it was kind of like, I don't know, I guess it's hard to describe. I mean, I think it was temptation, it was weakness, it was not that I didn't believe in the law of chastity, but when it came to Travis, I that was more important.
Do the laws of attraction also apply to recording phone sex conversations?
The law of attraction? I guess it could be construed that way in that when we were doing those things, I got positive, I had positive interaction with Travis. He wasn't angry, he was complimentary, he would say things that were in a complimentary way. He would be nice to me, so it was the attention that I craved. And the law of attraction does state that you focus more on the qualities of the person that you like and don't focus on the qualities that you don't like. And so when we were doing those things, we were both focused on each other in maybe not a spiritually positive way, but in a way that made me feel good and him as well.
You stated there were times that Travis made you tear out pages of negative things that you said about him. Right before that, you said you wouldn't write negative things about Travis in your journal, which is correct.
They're both correct. The entry that he made me tear out was very detailed and a lot more, I was quoting him directly on a couple of things he had said. And when he discovered those, he made me, and my feelings. So I used to write things to purge. When he admonished me and reminded me of the secret, at that point I wrote less specific things. Sometimes I would just write about my emotions, and sometimes those were negative. But writing about suicidal thoughts, for example, helped me process it. And getting it down on paper helped it get it out of me, I felt like. So when it came to Travis, I would be less specific. Like I would write, today Travis was obscenely mean to me, but I wouldn't go into detail about what that meant. I just remember that that was a really bad day, so I would write something to that effect.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to take a 10-minute recess at this time. Please remember the admonition. Be back in the designated area at 3:50. I'm sorry, right, 3:50. You're excused. Council, please approach.